the background and the color card so that when it exports with a background that isn't just solid black. So I'm going to close the character walk cycle peg. That does not get rid of anything. It's all there. It's just now not taking up so much space. I'm also going to poke the eyeball of the ground layer, although I could use it as a reference just to make sure I don't accidentally draw the ground below her feet. But I plan on drawing the background above her feet, so that shouldn't be an issue. So I'm just going to go to Layers, Drawing, and I'm going to call this BG, as in background, not as in the Bee Gees. Her. Okay, so I'm just going to sketch out and see what she's on. She's going to be walking on the ground. There we go. Again, I want to make sure that it is higher. Oh, extend the background. I want to make sure that her feet don't go above the background at any point. Okay, that's good. And then if you want, you can draw little trees or background details. I'm just going to go rough with this. Now, if you want to scroll the background, you absolutely can do that. You can do that by just drawing out the background and then putting it on a peg and moving it. Now, if you wanted to do parallax scrolling, which would mean elements that are closer move quicker, elements that are farther move more slowly, then in that case, you just would want to break the background into separate pieces, separate layers, and put them on separate pegs so that they could move. Well, that's all the way up there, and you won't even see that. Let's bring this down a little bit. We're not going to go as detailed as that, though, for this. But you could. You just put them on separate layers, put those separate layers on separate pegs, and then animate them. You could also go with 3D layers. It's possible to do 3D layers, actually set them up in 3D and then move a camera, but we are not going to do that either. We don't need it to be that complicated. You could fake it. You could fake it by putting it on separate pegs and moving them separately. But again, we'll just keep this simple. There we go. Okay, and then she walks across. So if we wanted to move it, which I don't know if it's really necessary to move this one, but if you wanted to, we showed one way of doing it in the node view by selecting the object and holding down Command P under node view, and that does work. But another option is you can select the layer and hold down Shift P, which creates a peg specifically for that layer that you have selected. So it's just one layer, so that works just fine. We can start if you do decide to move the background, you will want the background to be a little bit larger, at least a little bit larger, maybe even way larger, depending on how much you plan on moving this environment. So let's extend this a little more. This might be a little higher than needed too, this part. Okay, that's probably fine. And then we could take the peg, and if she's moving this way, we'd want the background to move the other way. So again, you don't want to make it too obvious unless she's just starting to walk into the forest, so maybe starting it here. Again, we have the little guy running, so Animate is on, and you can either have it stop at the point where she's walked off screen, or you can keep it going a little more. There we go. So doing that will make it look like she's walking quicker. There we go. We have the character walking, and it's fine that she comes to a stop out here. She's outside the range of the camera. Okay, then we're going to add a color card by hitting the little plus. Go to color card. Make sure none of your layers are selected, otherwise it's going to attach it to that layer, and that may not be necessary. So this is white with little gray squares. That's fine. That just means that it is a color card. If you click on any other layer, it goes away. If you want the color card to change color, you can just hit the plus sign, and you can go down here where it says color red, color green, and color blue, RGB. That is an additive color scheme. The higher the number, the closer it is to white. 255 is the maximum number. So if you wanted this to, let's say, be gray, let's say a light gray, you would want to keep the numbers the same, but high. So that makes it a light gray. If you want it to be a dark gray, then you would want to drop these closer to 0, so maybe like 50 or 100. If you want it to be black, make it 0. If you want to make it something like red, then you could drop the green and the blue to 0 and keep red at 255, and that'll be bright red. If these are at 0 and you bring red lower, it'll be a dark red. If you want it to be more like pastel or like a pinkish color, you could do maybe red at 255 and have green and blue be something like 200 or 150 or something to that effect. Then you get more of a pastel color. Or you can leave it at white with the 255. If you want a full colored background, you could always either draw it in here or paint it in another software and import it by going to File, Import, placing it in, and just making sure it's the size of your camera or larger. Any of those things will do. But this will at least prevent your character from exporting on a pure black background, which is an easy thing to forget if you've been working on this dark gray background the whole time. But when exported, it would export on a black background. So, assuming you're all done and ready to go, we can export this file by going to File, Export, Movie, and H.264 MPEG-4, that's great. We're going to browse and put this, I'm going to save this into the desktop for now, and I'm just going to call this Walk Cycle Demo. But for you, you're going to want to put in your name, so this would be maybe like Decor again, and for you guys, maybe Walk Cycle Project or Walk Cycle, something like that. Something that, as long as it's easy to know what it is and who it belongs to. So for good naming conventions, I'll just call it Decor again, Walk Cycle. And we'll hit Save. For all, that just means it's going to export all of the frames. If it does frames, it says from 1 to 86, which is actually the full duration, but you could change those numbers if this was selected. Export from display mode, yes. It's hard to see it. Oh, there it is. But yes, we do want to export from the display node. For the most part, you're not really going to need to change any of this. Your default settings should be good. So we're going to hit OK. And then this file shouldn't take that long to export because these are all sketches. We don't have imported files. We don't have effects or anything like that going on. So it should be a pretty quick export. Not always, but it can be. Then when we're done, you should be able to locate your file, and we can play it and see how it looks. Let's make this file smaller so we can see if the video plays. Here we go. And there we go. We have our walk cycle. If this is a little high, we can bring her down by just taking the camera. Well, we can bring the whole thing down by selecting the camera, grabbing the move, and just shuffling it down. There we go. And then her head's not so close to the top. It also makes the background look a little better because there's some parts that were extending too high. And then you can just always go to File, Export. If you do make any changes, don't forget to re-export because those changes are not saved. Hit OK. So it already exists. That's fine. I'm going to hit Overwrite. Exports the movie. And then once it's done, you can play it again and check the changes. Okay, so now she's a bit lower. That looks better. And there you go. You have your final walk cycle.